Hey everybody, it's Dr. Marangano again. So today I'm excited because what I want to share with you guys today is actually some really good news. Finally, some good news about everything that's going on out here. So what I want to talk to you about is one of the biggest problems we've had with this whole coronavirus thing is the data, the stats, the news, what they're saying on the news. I mean, there's hundreds of posts about those numbers aren't valid, how we're labeling deaths, like all that stuff. It's very gray. It's very confusing. It's hard to get some real truth out of what's going on here. So I've been able to find a couple really cool studies that I want to show you guys that'll really cut like right to the answer the question, how scared do we need to be? It's a really important question. How virulent is this? How deadly is this disease? How deadly is this virus? So one of the things that we could trust, or one of the things that we want to be able to trust, is there's something called a mortality rate. And what a mortality rate is just like what it sounds like. Mortality rate is how many people are expected to die. Initially, the number was something like 1 or 2 million people, according to what the experts were saying, and then it was 250,000 people, and right now we're at about 60,000, which is tragic, but it's a much less number than what we thought. That doesn't necessarily answer the question, how deadly specifically is this virus? How bad is this pathogen? So one of the ways we try to figure that out is how many people have died over how many people have actually contracted the virus, or have built antibodies to the virus, or become infected is the term we use. So deaths over number infected. However many people die out of those who have been infected, that's the mortality rate, how many people it kills. So forget about the how many people died. We've got some numbers out there, whether they're blown up or whether they're not. There are numbers that we can use. It's a starting point. But what we don't know is how many people actually have had this virus. How many people have built up antibodies. The testing has been poor up to this point. It's just all happening so fast. It's not even a right or wrong thing. It's hard to keep track of all that. But there's been some really cool studies coming out all over the world. I got two that I'm going to share with you today. They're really, really good. This first one here it's from something called the Straits Times. It was published through Reuters. It's about Amsterdam. This was a Dutch study. It says Dutch study suggests 3% of population may have coronavirus antibodies. So this is the study here, 3% of the Dutch population. So I'm going to explain what that means. So what they said was they took large amount of blood samples from large amounts of people, and they figured out who actually had these antibodies. And they figured out 3% developed antibodies against the new coronavirus. That's what the health authorities said on Thursday, April 16th. So we're talking about just about a week ago. So we're going to do a little bit of the math here. So what does that mean? They estimated 34,000 people were infected. So however many people died out, or however many people were infected, and that number was 34,000 people, the bottom number. Okay? So now they're saying 3% have antibodies. So 3% of the population has been infected and built antibodies. 3% of the population is 17,280,000 people. Okay, so 3% of 17,280,000 people is just over 500,000 people, 518,000 people. So what that means is there weren't 34,000 people infected. There were 500,000 people infected. So this many people died out of 500,000 people. So if it's like one person died out of two people, it's a 50% death rate. One person died out of hundreds of people, that death rate goes much, much smaller. So if that number goes to 500,000 on this study, what that means, the mortality rate in this study in the Netherlands drops down to 0.75, less than a 1% mortality rate. That means it's much less virulent, much less deadly than we thought it was, which is awesome. Now that's in the Netherlands, but that means it's bringing down the numbers dramatically. So as a reference, the seasonal flu has about a 0.1% mortality rate. It's a very low mortality rate. People die from the flu, but when we put it in consideration, 0.1% mortality rate, we're not closing down the country for that. It happens. We do our thing. We go about our business. We wash our hands, all that kind of stuff. 0.1. What they were saying about the coronavirus is that mortality rate is going to be much, much higher, 10 times higher. I've seen numbers 7, 8%, 4.7% is the number I read most recently. It's a big number compared to 0.1%. Right now in the Netherlands, 0.75%. So that's in the Netherlands. But what about here in the United States? What is the most affected area in the United States right now? It's New York City, okay? This is just today from the New York Times. Just today they printed, Governor Cuomo says 21% of those tested in New York City had virus antibodies. That's a live update today. The actual number is 21.2% in New York City. They did all of New York in different numbers, but in the city itself, where it's most densely populated, the number's 21.2%. Okay? So in New York City, the population of New York City is roughly 8.3 million people. Okay? So we're going to do the same math. What they estimated was the estimate was 250,000 people who were infected. Okay, if you take 21.2% of that 8.3 million people, that's 1.7 million people. Okay, 1.7 million people that have been infected, that have been carrying it and didn't even know they were carrying it. Okay, so 250,000 versus 1.7 million. That brings, and this is a quote from Governor Cuomo. It would also mean that the fatality rate from the virus was relatively low, about 0.5%, Mr. Cuomo said. That's from the governor himself. What's going on is this mortality rate is being shown to be not that deadly. 0.5% in New York City today. That's not a big deal. That's just not a big deal. We can put our fears a little bit to rest. It's not killing off massive numbers. So whether the numbers are blown up or not blown up, and what to do and masks and all that kind of stuff, what you can look at is what's an infected rate, what's the mortality rate, and if that number is close to what the flu is, what are we doing? The data has come through. It was appropriate to be cautious in the beginning. It was appropriate to step back and say, hey, let's make sure. We don't know what this is. Maybe it's deadly. Maybe it's way worse. Everybody back off. But now the numbers are here. That was today in New York, 0.5%. That is low. That is relatively low. That is not a big deal. That is not closing the country numbers. And that's the worst part in the whole United States. That means the rest of us is much lower than that. So that is really, really good news. So I was thrilled to be able to share that with you guys today. I'm going to keep bringing you tips. I'm going to keep bringing you information. I love the data. I love finding these resources. I'm here for you guys, anything you need. I like sharing this stuff on my page, on my business page. If you guys have any questions, if you want to see links to these numbers, I got it all for you. I'm happy to share it. Write down a message for me, give us a call, shoot me an email. We're putting these posts up on our YouTube page. I'm all new to that, but you can subscribe to our new YouTube page. Just anything you need, that's what we're here for. But as a people, as a group, as Americans, we can start calming down. We can start going back to normal. So you guys have a great night. I'm glad to share this with you. Bye.